Hello everybody. My name is Johannes. I'm a consultant on digital transformation. I'm in Germany sitting, and I'd like to welcome each one of you to this wonderful webinar we're doing today. And this webinar is about digital transformation and what I truly believe in makes a difference if we talk about transformation, that we also look on different perspectives. And what brings us together is also a study that we've been working on together. And yes, you can get the study. Maybe Mariana, who's supporting us, will also provide the link, but we want to talk with you about the experience that we have from different angles and from different perspectives to transformation. And first of all, I'd like to give the word to my guests who are in this session together with me. It's Ryan and Ken, and Ryan, probably just please introduce yourself, first of all.
Well, ahoy, everyone, wherever you are. Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where you're zooming in from. But I'm excited to be here. You know, one of the things that I'm a big fan of is how to bridge the gaps that continuously appear in front of us. And so I was happy to participate in the Keenfolks study, giving my 2 cents. And I'm here today to share with you off the cuff what I think will make sense as we look forward to some of these new digital trends. I'm a speaker, I'm a stick figure artist, and I'm a ginger. So you've got it coming to you here from all angles. I like to look at how we can market ourselves in business to keep the human side of business alive, because no matter whether you're enterprise or B2B or B2C, I believe people want to do business with people. And so if you can find ways to put yourself or put the humans or put your employees in front of what's happening, I think the world will be a better place.
Thanks, Ryan. I totally agree on that. And I think that's a really key point, even though many people are saying this, that really doing this from human to human, understanding that this is what it's all about. Data connects us, processes connect us, and that's where you can make a real difference. And maybe one thing to add also, Ryan, as you and I are just talking, you have an amazing TED Talk. It has been several years ago. I don't know if you already did another one, but it was really classy. So everyone, please look at it. Ryan Foland's TED Talk. Maybe you can say one word related.
Sure. So I actually have 4. My first talk is called How to Not Get Chased by a Bear. My second talk is Borderline Millennial Disorder. Oh. My third TEDx talk is the Why No One Cares What You Do. And my third talk is The Power of the Pause. So you can go to my website, ryan.online, and I make it easy for you. Scroll down, you can find them. But, you know, the one thing that is fun looking back on all the TEDx experiences is the core root of the platform, which is ideas worth spreading. And to bring it back to here today, I think that we have some ideas worth spreading in this jumping the gap, right? Mind the gap. Don't mind the gap. We're here to jump the gap. So yes, if you want to learn how to not get chased by a bear, you can check that out. But Ken, let's I mean, are you getting chased by bears these days? What's happening with you?
Yeah, I thought that was an easy one. You just got to run faster than the guy next to it.
Yeah, well, the takeaway in my talk is that it's actually not a bear. It's an invisible bear. It's all the stressors in life that feels like it's a bear. So, yeah. But yes, that is a good strategy.
No, I appreciate that, and I'm a huge fan of TEDx, and I wasn't aware that you were a participant there, and a good one at that. So I'll have to check that out for sure. We have a good forum here in Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia, for those across the globe tuning in, and really excited to be here today. Very passionate about digital transformation. I work within the financial services segment here at a company called Epsilon, and we're a big data and marketing provider. We see a ton of online and offline behavior. So we do have a lot of experience, and I do as far as helping customers and organizations really transform to supercharge, the customer experience, which is really so critical in the world today with so many choices out there. But really delighted to be a part of this study and to be part of this webinar. Just thrilled with the thought leadership and the content that's already been out there, and looking forward to this conversation today.
And you're scared of bears and gaps, as far as I heard. Right, Ken?
Yeah, not a fan. Spiders and bears and snakes.
You want to know a fun random fact? And I'll start it with a question. Are there polar bears in Antarctica? What would your instincts tell you?
Yes.
Yes, but there is none.
There are no bears in Antarctica, and the name Arctica means bear, and Antarctica means no bear. So it's actually named after the fact that there's no bears in Antarctica. And now, why am I sharing this with you? It's because sometimes what we think is common knowledge is just what we think makes sense. And sometimes the easy answer is staring us right in the face. And I think the same thing is true with some of the technology that we're seeing being developed at this moment. We might think one thing, but it's when we get a bunch of people together and we tell jokes, then we actually learn.
But related to that, before we get to our study and the questions, to wrap it up, that's what I truly love about your work, Ryan. You're digging for those insights, yeah, and you have an excellent storytelling, like already the title of the TEDx, and now you provided such an insight. And I think that combination is really, really great. Also, if you want to reach people, yeah, in those difficult transformation times. So we already have a thing you're providing.
Well, I will also share a nugget that my father has shared with me. Both my parents are educators, and the one thing my dad always reminded me was, if you can get people to laugh, you can get them to learn. And exactly. I want us to all remember that technology and digital transformation can be stressful, but when you find the fun in it, then actually there's learning involved. And when learning is fun, then what you do for your work sometimes isn't as nail chalkboardy.
Yeah, you can you agree on that? That laughing helps. I mean, I experienced the same. We have a saying in Germany, which is, whenever there's a funeral, there's always one very key strange joke.
Yeah, I mean, I had breakfast this morning with a group, and we were talking about how the women, the wives in the family, are always right, but if it's the laughter that sometimes breaks up that stickiness sometimes.
And I think maybe also, especially in these times we're having with the pandemic and the crisis. But let's go forward. Mariana, if you can help me with the first key question that we have. Exactly. Let's go on the agenda. So we will look in three main areas, and just for everyone who's in this room, we certainly also had Helen, a woman who's wonderful, doing wonderful work also in the States, who wanted to join, but she unfortunately canceled last minute, which is something I truly feel painful about, because I always myself I'm doing he for she, so I'm empowering women. But I'm glad that you guys are joining. I just wanted to let everyone know that there's certainly no intention related. Also within the study we were doing, we were looking on having a balance, both from men and women, but also from international side. So we'll talk about understanding digital transformation today. We go to leading digital transformation, and then we go to customer-centric operation models, which I might also add on this point, the customer-centric point of view, or the human point of view, as Ryan also said before, is something in the first phase of digital transformation 10-15 years ago was completely separate, but it's kind of moving together, and it's getting very, very core. And certainly you have a chance to ask questions. So if we go to, exactly, I'll start. As you can see here on the slide, there's certain areas which are involved in digital transformation, and the question is, what are the major trends in digital transformation for 2022? Who would like to join? Ken, is that fine for you? What are
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, the one that I don't see that is up there is a mobile first, strategy, and I think that is truly important in anything we do nowadays, especially with the pandemic and coming out of it. I work in the financial services world, and banks and credit unions and other financial institutions just have so much data at their fingertips. A lot of times they just don't know what to do with it. And so I think that AI, I think that data, I think mobile, and then I think really customer journey is really important in understanding behaviors. So those are the things that I think are kind of the hot spots.
And do you have the impression, because data is connected to AI, and you said you have to sort it? Yeah. Is this something where companies you're working with are struggling, or maybe also from a point of view, does the pandemic help to speed it up? I can say, just maybe from my end, it made in Germany very, very obvious that all of them haven't sorted the data, but they would truly need it. So we've seen a huge gap related to that. So what's your impression?
No, I mean, there's so many choices out there, and just because you have data on me doesn't mean that you know my interest in behavior. And so I think that some of the companies get it right because they are tapping into that data. They know how to take action on it. However, others are not. And so I think that's the where AI, automation, and some of the technology tools come into play. But you got to have organization and people to make it work too. Just because you have the tech doesn't make it work for you. And so I would agree. I mean, I think the data is there. Everybody's trying to collect more data, and there's so much data. What's most, I think that's the bite size that you have to, take into consideration on how you're going to take action on it.
Perfect. Ryan, what's your perspective on digital transformation?
Well, first, I'm going to challenge myself to hit every single one of these in a single sentence, because I think what's important to understand with digital transformation is that it is all connected. And that's the thing that I find most fascinating. So this is like a Mad Libs, and we're going to try it here. Through 5G, which creates ultimate customization through automation and AI, we now are in a place where we have data that is more secure, cybersecurity, which sets a foundation for Web3, which with technology like blockchain, VR, AR, and IoT will lead us into the metaverse, in which all of digital transactions will become ownership based through NFTs on mobile first platforms.
There you go.
Wow, that was pretty cool, honestly. I mean, as I said before, one key thing is on digital transformation, everything builds up with each other, connects with each other. But the explanation that you just made was, wow, honestly. Ken, how do you feel about that?
I feel good about it. So, and it's interesting because this is what interests me in digital transformation.
Yeah.
I'm working with a Canadian technology company in the enterprise 5G space. The name is Shibodi, and I'll drop in the chat in a little bit. But I believe it all starts with 5G at the end of the day, because, well, do you guys know what G stands for in 5G?
Do you know, Ken? I personally don't know. No,
I don't. I don't.
Okay, well, I didn't either, so don't feel bad. So I actually put a tweet out and I said, what does a G stand for 5G? Or what is a G in 5G? I'm asking for a friend. I got over 100 replies, from goats to gigahertz to gizmos to gold to all kinds of stuff. It simply means generation. First generation, second generation, 3G, third generation, 4G, fourth generation, 5G is fifth generation. Guess what? They're already mapping out sixth generation. What happens is that every decade, plus or minus, there's enough innovation and enough need for new changes in the technology to where there's a whole nother generation. Now, there's this governing body with parts all over the world called the 3GGP, which sets the standards so that with this new technology, everybody can play well together. The public 5G is not all it's cracked up to be. You hear Verizon and T-Mobile and everybody says, this is the fastest thing since sliced bread. It's going to be amazing. But the network in the public realm is really not there. So you have the public going, well, what's up with this 5G? It sucks. It doesn't even exist. This is a big fraud. Some people think that you get 5G when you get a vaccine, which is not true. The idea here is that on the enterprise side, you can really see the power of 5G because people are building private 5G networks. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to technology, just like you might think that there's bears in Antarctica because 5G has to do with technology, 5G is more than bandwidth and speed, although that's what everybody talks about. The biggest difference between 4G and 5G is that for the first time ever, applications can now program the network instead of just asking for available bandwidth and speed. And so fundamentally what we have here is not a 5G is a faster 4G. 5G is a whole different way of looking at technology. 4G are these big millimeter waves. 5G are these little millimeter waves. 4G, you have big base stations. 5G, you have small base stations. But what it really means is that you have more customization than ever for these critical applications or for end-to-end computing where you have visibility in real time against 20 different industries or 20 different factories you have all around the world. So when we look at what the connectivity that we have is going to launch, it's going to launch stuff that we don't even know can exist because we have to have a mental shift in how we look at this technology. 5G will enable the metaverse to have the speeds and bandwidth that it needs. It'll enable application developers to create apps that have never been created before. We live in a world where you can share an image to millions of people, but who actually owns it? That's where NFTs come involved. Very funny story. I saw Heidi Klum yesterday tweet that she bought a CryptoPunk and asked if it looked like her. And I didn't think it looked like her. So I drew a stick figure NFT of Heidi Klum and I shared it with her. I said, this looks more like you. And somebody already put a bid on it. And it's just like, it's a whole new world in a new way of looking at things. So instead of looking at, 5G is an upgrade from what we had before, think of it as totally different. If you look at AI, don't think about what you've known about AI. Understand that AI can unlock stuff that we don't even know exists. And so I think that that's the big thing when it comes to digital transformation, is that we can't look at this as just a software upgrade. We have to look at this as a paradigm shift. We have new tools, we have new technology, and from a marketing standpoint, it's never been as exciting. And there's this move towards decentralization, which can be empowering if you understand it. So I'm going to let that sit for just a second and see what Ken thinks. Or Jonas. Sorry. I feel like I'm talking too much.
Ken, is there anything you want to add, especially on the going deeper sense of these tools and how they connect?
I think it all kind of goes back to the end in mind. And really it's around how can you make it easier for your prospects and customers to connect with you and to really have a brand that everybody wants to engage with. And I think there's a lot of truth to what Ryan just said about the paradigm shift. It's not, bigger, stronger, faster. It's how can automation and machine learning and AI really help to enhance the rules and business logic that I'm already thinking about so that it can, help me scale. And from that aspect, that's what gets me jazzed about digital transformation, because it supercharges marketing. It helps with customer acquisition, and it helps with the engagement, because we've all had brands that we've dumped. It's make it easy for me. The best thing that was invented for me was the GPS. And so, when I look to go to Home Depot and I'm, going down the aisles, I don't have to do that anymore. I can just say, okay, it's in aisle, 11, base 35, and boom, I'm right there. I got it. It's very easy. And so, to me, it's got to be that way in order for me to continue to come back, because there's so many choices that are out there. I can remember many years ago when, when I had a terrible experience, I got in my car and, I went down the road, went to another bank, and I don't have to do that anymore. I just go out and boom, boom, boom. I've got a new account already open. So I don't know, Joahnnes, if you got anything to add to that, but
I totally agree on that, and I think what you guys are saying is completely wrapping up what I said at the beginning when I was looking back. The term digital transformation was not that was completely different from what we call today customer experience and the CRM and all that stuff. That was just a different angle, and they're not connected. But especially these connection and everything is building up in the end towards people, empowering people to do a better job, but in the end also we have to serve people, and that I think a really key point in the transformation is really what especially when Ryan, when you told the story with all the terms, how does it connect and to open the mind of people related, because it happens so often that you're driven by a technology or something, you pick it out, and then you have to open the mind to understand the whole picture, to understand your part and the part of the technology. And that's what makes the difference.
So a couple of things I want to point out. One is the famous quote from Henry Ford, which is, if I asked my customers what they needed, they'd tell me I needed a faster horse. But he built them a car. And so I feel like a lot of us are stuck in this thing, like, how can we do this faster versus how can we do this different? And Ken, the GPS brings value to your life because you're not aimlessly wandering around buying stuff that you don't need, because we've all been there. So I want to bring it back to, how can you utilize this transformation to bring value to the customer? So with augmented reality, you're able to maximize someone's space. You now can travel anywhere and have like a computer system that's here that you're seeing out of the corner of your eye. That's valuable. If you look at the blockchain, companies like the blockchain companies that are making this accessible, dealing through the sustainability elements of it and creating transparency. So strangers from Germany and Long Beach can do a transaction with no one involved. There's less fees, there's less need for trust, and that's more value. When you have NFTs with consulting now, instead of somebody paying me directly, I have them buy an NFT that unlocks the value that I would provide. And now they have a new digital tangible asset that could increase over time. With automation, the value is that you're spending less time doing things that you don't need to do. IoT, the sensors now can do the data in dangerous places in real time. 5G can make things customizable. Cybersecurity things are safer. So if you look at each of these, what is the value that it unpacks? And so think not what digital transformation can do for you. Think what you can do for digital transformation, right? And so I think it's interesting when we look at not forgetting the human component and what value it drives to people. It's not about the bits and bytes. It's about the value that comes out of these technologies.
Great. So let's go to the second question. Thank you for this deep dive already on this first question. I think it's very precious what we're digging out here. I hope also you guys who are joining can agree. And the second key question I'm mentioning now is how to implement a digital transformation strategy from a company executive's perspective. Who would like to start?
Ken? Paper, rock, scissors?
Ken, I think you.
I'll go. I think this is really the secret sauce in making this work. I think, the ones that typically have a hand in this are the CIOs, the CTOs, the chief marketing officers. And again, I think you start with the end in mind, but you have to take inventory on currently where you are. And that's not only with technology, but also people, processes. Do you have all the ingredients that you need to be successful? And then from there, you create the roadmap. But alongside with that, you have to ideate and you have to figure out what the innovation is going to be. And so you really have to measure twice, cut once as you're starting to build this thing out, because it's a daunting task for companies who have done the same thing, have been successful, predictable revenue, but you have to change. The world is changing and they've seen that. So those are the steps that you have to take. The internal piece is the hardest one, because there's the agile process that you have to use to get everybody on board to start the process and whatnot. But the organizational change is really aligning the new way of doing things to the output that you're looking to get, to make sure that everybody's on board with the way you're taking the business. So happy to talk about that more, but I don't know, Joahnnes, Ryan, you got any additional comments?
Ryan, go ahead.
Sure. If we think about executives, you have to think about what's in the back of their mind. They're looking at large level decisions that they don't necessarily want to make the wrong decision, because if they make the wrong decision, then their job might be on the line. And this is why what I'm seeing in these larger enterprises is that the CEO isn't necessarily making the decision by themselves. They're hiring these service integrators, or they're hiring consultants, so that there's a very data-driven approach at the logic and selling why they're making this transition. So I think that when we look at an executive's perspective, a big part of that is bringing in other people at a higher level from a consultancy level, so that they can really not make a decision in an echo chamber. The second thing I'll echo is that an executive lives and breathes by how well he can convince the board of directors the direction of the company. And so it's not just the executive's perspective, it's the board of directors' perspective. And when you're talking to a board of directors, they're interested in revenue, they are interested in intellectual property, they are interested in metrics, they are interested in those types of things. So the executive has to juggle outside viewpoints and consultants, has to translate the logic to the board of directors. And then, as Ken mentioned, the third piece is internally selling that to your team, who maybe has been doing the same thing they've been doing for a while. And to get them to change is a whole new change management. Let's take 5G for an example in an enterprise situation. Application developers who are 4G application developers do not have the time, let alone the desire, to learn the intricacies of engineering a network. The network engineers are in the business of engineering the network and are not as interested in learning about the application development side. So you have these gaps that are forming. People have to learn new skills. They have to take time to gain more insights. And you either convince your employees to bridge that gap themselves, or you find other people who will help to bridge that gap. And that's where I think an executive's position is to get external advice, communicate it to the board of directors to show that this will have business results. If you get it past the board, you go to your internal team and you decide, can we cross this gap ourselves, or do we need other technology or other services to help bridge that gap? And the one thing that I've learned in talking with these enterprise solutions is that there has to be an ecosystem. You can't just have one service provider providing everything. And so then you're dealing with interoperability challenges, and you're dealing with a service provider from one carrier and hardware from another carrier. And this is translatable to any of these different technologies, the metaverse, NFTs, Web3. So when you look at the solution, an executive's perspective has to be that of building an ecosystem around the digital transformation.
That's a lovely summary, Ryan, and I can agree on what you guys said. I mean, one key point I experience very, very often is really that point that Ryan said. Is it only the executive? No, it actually is the board of directors. Yeah, because in the end, whether there's an understanding of where we stand and where the needs are and where we go. Yeah, and the second point is exactly related to what you said, Ryan. It's the translation. Yeah, in the end, of course, also. You can use any kind of data to do it internally, or you can have consultants, as you just said. But in the end, it's really like, as you've seen in the chart before, we had, even on the technology side, everything is connected, and that you have the same thing internally, but with the different departments. Yeah, and so a lot of has to do really with translating. And I think the translating is also a key part of what we had before. Like, what can you do for the transformation? If you're able to translate, no matter with technology or by yourself, you're driving transformation in the end. Agree, guys?
Yeah. I think the other piece is, people sometimes, organizations sometimes underestimate that interoperability and the integrations. I mean, if you take an inventory of all the technologies that these big enterprise companies have, I mean, it is 80 plus, 100 plus. And for the functions that you're looking to use, because it all is so connected, there is a lot of discussion that needs to be had with the different departments in the organization, IT, the third-party vendors that are providing you this technology, to make sure what you want to do actually will work. So I think that is a very, very valid point that cannot be underestimated.
And just to bring this back to the small mom and shop pop or the solopreneur, because we're talking enterprise solution, but I think there's a lot of relatable terms here, is that don't get overwhelmed by having to bring it all together, but what makes sense for you and your clients, and maybe pick one, right? So would the metaverse enable your clients to do something more? Would using NFTs as part of your business structure bring more value to them? From a mom and pop shop, you probably don't need a 5G enterprise solution at this point. 4G will get you where you need to be. So pick and choose. There's also softwares that utilize artificial technology that can maybe help you create social posts faster, or help you, take videos and chop them up quicker. And so there's all these little small things that at a smaller level can help you bridge the gap if you're a small team. And then you just amplify those problems to a larger scale. And that's what you're dealing with when the enterprise, where you really, it's a necessity to have all of those pieces to make one actual jump or bridge across where we need to go. And then in 10 years, you're going to have to do it all over again.
It's always refresh the button and start again. But maybe if we take out of this chapter, I think it's also an encouragement for everyone who's listening. Work on your translating skills. Yeah. No matter if it's the person you're directly working with, or if it's someone sitting at the other end of the world, the better you make them understand which value do they have for their job and for the overall result. Yeah. It's something I'm running my business now since 10 years, but when I was hired, I was always spending late hours with people to make them understand. But in the end, these hours I invested always came back with a great result, because they know how to interact then in the end. Yeah. This is how you can make the engine work. And
Make that engine purr.
Exactly.
Or maybe it's like, a more of an eco-friendly, not gas-powered engine, and then it just revs like this.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great picture. And sometimes after a horse comes a car, as we had before.
And so now people might want a faster car, but really, in the future, Elon Musk is going to say, people asked me for a faster Tesla, so I built them a rocket ship, right?
Yeah.
Great idea. So we're getting to question number 3, please. Our final question before we still have the opportunity for everyone with Q&A. Marina, are you there? Okay. How its effectiveness can be measured. How can you measure the effectiveness of digital transformation? Who would like to start?
Well, I'll jump in, and I would say that data. that's the short answer to it. So you have things like net promoter scores. If what you're doing, people are sharing. If you are creating, if you're creating something that you can track and measure, is it increasing over time? I think that you have to also understand there's going to be growing pains to any technology adoption. There's going to be transitional struggles as you get people trained to new technologies and softwares. So I think the short answer is not a pure form of data, as in more is better, but actually defining what success looks like and then trying to achieve that. I believe that shorter, more aggressive deadlines will get things done, as opposed to just, well, let's run at this for a quarter and see what it looks like. And so I think working with your team to understand what metrics make sense for them makes them involved with the process, because no one wants to say, you need to hit these numbers. They would rather be consulted what those numbers mean, what the bandwidth is, how that makes sense, so that their time is best use spent. In a scrappy startup situation, it gets hard because a smaller number of people are doing a larger number of jobs. But if you are at that enterprise level, work with your employees to find out what type of metrics can we track, so that we can say what you're doing actually leads to a result that's a business outcome that we can report to the board, so that they can understand why we're paying you what we're paying you and why we're giving you the company shares that we're giving you, right? It goes back to that translation up to the board. And I think that if you create your own sort of dashboards or metrics that you can measure, then people know what they're running after.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of pile onto that. I think from a standpoint of measuring, that's always the hard part too, because what do you measure? And from a standpoint of just pure numbers, customer acquisition, that can be deposits or loan products, or how much revenue you're spending with they're spending with your brand. Has it increased over a certain period of time, as Ryan mentioned? How about retention? How many customers have left? And that's an easy one to measure too. But the engagement one, I think, is interesting. How can you measure the engagement? Are more people engaging with your brand? And some of that has to be use tech. You have to use some tech to do that. But that is a really good indicator on how sticky that customer is. And then from that aspect, you can then take that digital transformation to offer additional products or additional services or additional things that they may not even know they need, like they do at Amazon. So overall, I think that those are some of the areas that when customers are trying to measure, those are some key focus areas.
Absolutely. And I think as we started today within our session with data, we're coming now to the effectiveness, and we're seeing exactly this is what the board should be able to understand. This is what the board should be able to have translated in the end. Only then you can steer. And that's similar as we had it with all these technologies where we had everyone thinks this is still a horse, and it's no longer even a car. It's an aeroplane right now. It's also on the effectiveness. The same thing. You need to rework it and get better on it in order to be able to steer. And maybe one thought also related, where I would like to get your opinion, Ken and Ryan, is what I figured out, especially in Germany, was even before COVID, that this kind of being sustainable also is becoming more and more interesting related to KPIs, but it's something they haven't had on the radar. A lot of companies, some had, especially in the startup area, but this is something where it's especially also from no matter if it's the clients or people who are working there, having a look. Is it only something where you're saying we have the greatest logo, or what do you exactly do? and how do you measure it in the end? So this point is becoming more important. It's my impression.
The other thing I'll say, and maybe this supersedes all, is you can effectively understand and measure digital transformation by revenue. I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what you do, if what you're doing is not driving business results, if it's not driving actual revenue, then maybe that might be the wrong move. So data helps us to understand that in the smaller parts. But at the end of the day, at Shibodi, I keep reminding myself, how does what I'm doing link to revenue? I have a friend who helped actually started in his basement, his laundry room, and created the largest wine brand in the world, sold it to E. Gallo. And one of the things, he's got so many lessons that I've learned, but one is there's only two divisions in any company: sales and sales support. And that's it. No matter who you are, you're either selling or you're supporting people who are selling. And I think we have to remind ourselves of that harsh reality every once in a while, because we can talk about all the other ancillary things, but it all drives to revenue. So if you can show that this digital transformation will drive revenue, that's one of the easiest ways to help convince the board, to help convince stakeholders, because when people see growth, they see opportunity. And with these digital technologies, it's still early with NFTs. It's still early with Metaverse. It's still early with Web3. Right now, we are all scrolling. Soon, we will all be strolling. Our two-dimensional worlds will be we'll be walking around someone's profile, looking at their posts in a three-dimensional environment. And so eventually we'll all catch up. But it's those early adopters who take the risks that really put themselves out there. They will reap the rewards. And I think if you look at revenue as an ultimate measurement of the success of digital transformation, that's a good one to put your finger on the nose with.
Cool. One final question before we go to the Q&A, and everyone is already certainly invited, please, to write your questions if you still have to us in the chat. Thanks, Ken and Ryan, you've already answered a couple of, but one final question I would like to give to you now is, as we are on the part of effectiveness now, and we had the board, how does it steer, in which direction? What is your impression related to the pandemic and the crisis we are in? Did this have an effect in terms of how boards are steering? Yeah, I'd like to start with an example from Germany right now, because we are wealthy, we are used to growth, yeah, and we have huge companies like BMW, Siemens, and so on. But the question was really in the pandemic: can they keep the growth? Yeah, because whenever we had lockdowns and so on, everyone was just how can we keep it running in order to provide people to sail, as you just said, Ryan. So the back end was struggling in the end. Yeah, and so that was a very, very key point. And one question, in addition to that, is that's what I mentioned before. We have in Germany the wish of a lot of people in the end that a company should not just say, well, we do something for the nature and so on. Please tell us exactly what you do. So that's a question companies are asked quite often. But giving to you guys, what is your impression related to the crisis? How does this affect to boards and steering?
So I'll chirp in with an answer that might indirectly address this. I think the pandemic has made us all realize the importance of feeling purpose. And whether it's working for a company that's not only has amazing products, but has a low carbon footprint and is looking at a sustainable approach for a long term, if that aligns with your core mission, vision, value, and goals as an employee, then you can stick with it. I think we've seen this great resignation across the board because people are realizing that maybe their values are misaligned, or maybe they don't feel that purpose. And so I think we've all had time as employees to reflect on how we invest our time. And I think that has increased the value we put in our time, and that I think purpose. And so if you are a company in this transition with the pandemic, make sure you're clearly communicating the purpose, your mission, your vision, your values, and your goals. Because if I'm working from home, it's very easy for me to get distracted by the lizard that was actually walking up across. And I was like, oh, lizard, right? Oh, no, we're back at work here. But it's like the modern day squirrel, where it's like people are more distracted by things that they normally were removed from. And so the more we can help reinforce the purpose of what we're doing and the mission, vision, value, goals that we are as a company, then people will stick through those rougher patches because they believe in the overall arching long-term vision of it. And so I think that purpose at the end of the day, right? Simon Sinek, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Employees work with you not because of what they pay you, but probably because deep down why the company exists. And so that moral dilemma, I think we're having to face and deal with.
Perfect. Ken, anything you'd like to add?
I go back to, and this, I'll kind of pigtail on what Ryan mentioned earlier about humanizing, the experience. And everybody's got their own, we could talk for hours about the pandemic and, the thoughts and visions and right and wrong. But overall, it's changed our behavior. It's changed the way that we interact with people. For our company, they started implementing a day of rest every so often because they know that you need to recharge. Otherwise, with all the mental health concerns of not being connected, it's very detrimental. And so when you span that across small companies, enterprises, I think that's an important aspect. I think from the perspectives of the folks that I work with, we want to create an environment where folks can choose where they want to meet with us. If they want to do it in person, we want to give them that option. And if they want to do it online, we want to give them that option. And they recognize that these individuals have choices to make. And that's the power of this transformation from a standpoint of there's other choices. If you don't like the way you're doing it with me, I can go somewhere else. And so you have to adapt and change. But the pandemic it was a rude awakening for a lot of companies. And, according to Forrester, 35% of organizations started investing more in digital. And so it's one where you got to get on board and meet your customers where they want to meet. Otherwise, that could be lost revenue.
Perfect. So we are coming to Q&A, and Alberto has a question. I would like to know, yes, as you can see, I can see it on my MacBook. There's a little pop-up where you can download the digital gap study we contributed to. So please feel free to download it, to also, share it with people. Like we said before, a lot is about sharing and building an understanding. And we're coming to a Q&A, and Alberto has the question. I would like to know speaker's opinion about the cultural change as a main pillar in the digital transformation. Ryan, what do you say?
I think that the cultural shift is more towards decentralization. I think the cultural shift is more towards self-autonomy. I think the cultural shift is towards self-responsibility. I think the cultural shift is towards a healthy or more healthy balance between work and rest. I think that the cultural change is around a paradigm shift that has to happen so that you're not looking at things as an upgrade, but you're looking at things as a new opportunity grade. I think that the cultural shift needs to move towards more openness and vulnerability, where you can actually have frank conversations with your direct reports or your CEOs about how you're feeling and what your emotions are. I think that we should be moving away from sort of this fake persona that everything's fine until it's not. and encouraging employees to help share their feelings along the way, because the reality is that if you don't address those things and you're not employee centric in the way that you're doing it, it's easy for them to jump to someone else who has those concerns. So, my book is called Ditch the Act. And what I found is that the only way to get ahead in business is to be human. And so if you're leading a team and you're bulletproof, and every time they ask you that you're okay, you're like, I'm freaking great. I'm awesome. I'm great. You're like, oh, okay, well, that's good. But the next time that somebody asks you that you're good, and you're like, well, I actually had kind of a rough week. Like, oh, you too? Me too. I also had that, right? Or I haven't slept really well this last week. You too? Me too. So it's like the more relatable that we can be by being just a bit more vulnerable, sometimes it just takes somebody to go first so that they can go second. And I'm telling you, your employees are not going to necessarily go first. Once you start to open up and share, hey, this working from home thing it's got its challenges, you open up the door to have that real conversation. Because if you don't address that, or if you don't get that comfortable to share, or for them to ditch the act, then it's going to bottle up and they're going to bail and you won't know what happened. So I think we're moving hopefully towards a culture of transparency, decentralization, and autonomy, really.
Ken, what do you see?
Yeah, well, to me, culture is one of the most important ingredients in any business. Whether that's just the culture from the vision, the values that the top down treats their employees, but all the way to enacting change within an organization. So this is the secret sauce to get everybody on board with the digital transformation. And the organizational shift really is very relatable, because we all have had bad experiences. And so being able to portray and get people on board with the ability to deliver exceptional customer experiences, the way that you want to be treated, it's just a matter of how you get there. And in that aspect, it's just a lot of time, a lot of planning, and you really got to have solid leaders to lead that charge. It's and it's really hard if you're not on board, because one bad apple does spoil the bunch, and you just can get sideways really fast.
Absolutely. I like maybe in order to wrap it up, these key points, like Ryan, you said, it's really like in the end, everything is connected, as we said before. Yeah, it's really like the point also, how does everything build up? And it's the challenge for each individual in the end. How do you contribute to a whole thing which we had before? And it's like Ken, you said, it's then mixing up to a secret sauce, because my impression is, and that was also before the pandemic, the wording cultural change. You need to ask, what do you exactly mean with it? Yeah, what do you exactly invest? And that's an investment in people in the end. That's really something where, like I said, investing this extra time, and like Ryan also mentioned, opening up a bit with each other, because in the end, you won't get that connection and you won't get the impact if people are not trying to connect with each other best they can. And if you can't do it by yourself, or not even if you can't do it by yourself, get someone in to help you. I mean, it's something, for example, I'm helping with quite often. And a key point is we also just had it, helping executives, for example, to contribute, not just PowerPoint charts, but why did you make this decision? Is this something which was easy for you? Yeah. So people can understand a little more of the background, but they can also feel him in terms of why it's moving this direction. And this makes a huge, huge difference in the end. Yeah. So I think encouragement also to everyone who's listening, please invest into that extra time with what is driving your people, how do they contribute, but also showing yourself in that journey. Yeah.
I will agree. And I will say it's important to ditch the act. And if you look at the back of my book, it says, be human. It's the only way to get ahead in business today. So there we go.
It's lovely. Wonderful.
A bumper sticker? What is that?
It's a bookmark that also doubles as a headband.
That's awesome.
I think we had one question from Alexa, which was related to Web3. Where do we have it? Just digging it out. How do you envision the value creation to the community in the era of Web3? So that's our final question. Ryan,
I'll say it's the difference between scrolling and strolling. So I'll give you an interesting example. I have a graphic designer I've been working with for over 12 years. I've never met him in person. He lives very far away from me, and we really enjoy working together, but everything has been through email. I shipped him a pair of Oculus 2 glasses, made him do backflips, and I gave him instructions on where to meet me in the metaverse. And so he met me in a private boardroom that I created in the metaverse. And for the first time in 12 years, I was able to see him, give him a high five, which basically gave me a little buzzer on my hand. Bzz, and I was able to talk with him, have a communication, pull up a whiteboard, draw things out, and for the first time interact what felt like in a real environment. And it's the difference between sending an email or connecting with somebody in a real world space. The next time I meet with him, we're going to meet on Mars, and our avatars will have helmets on, and we'll be up on the top of a Mars mountain, like pontificating about the design for some design. But it's a whole different experience. So we literally wake up and on our phone, like our thumbs are just going bzz, 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 bzz. The difference in the value that's created in the metaverse and in Web3, right? Web3 is just it's a larger umbrella, and metaverse is part of it. It's that you're going to be going into your computer screen and you'll be in environments that just are more interactive. We're breaking past this actual screen. And so for me, the real value creation is going to be, ironically, more connection.
Yeah, that was the word I was going to use, is more connected. Well, 2 words, more connected.
Lovely.
Yeah, I mean, it's that, I mean, that's it. And so I don't know if I could sum it up better than Ryan.
Let's go. I mean, imagine a world where this webinar next year, instead of just us 3 as little dots, we had an entire interactive audience and we could see everyone that's just all around us. That's more connected.
We had one final question coming in, and just make sure, as we're already at the end, make each one of you a short answer. It's from Alexandro, and it's: how do you see ensuring digital rights and acting consciously impacting digital transformation? Apart from needed, do you see it as an opportunity for brands? Who would like to start?
Go for it, Ken. I'm going to drop a link in the chat. I'm going to grab it real quick.
How do you see ensuring digital rights and acting consciously impacting digital transformation? Apart from needed, do you see it as an opportunity for brands? I'm not entirely sure the question.
See, I'll take a crack at it. And what I was going to say is, get connected with an attorney who is bullish in the metaverse, the Web3 digital transformation space, because at the end of the day, digital rights is everything, and privacy and understanding how all this data happens. But there's everything from sexual harassment in the metaverse to people who are getting hacked, to people who are getting scammed. And I think that the more digital things get, the more bad actors can hide behind seeming like they're good. And I will say that about a month ago, my Twitter got hacked. And it was the most uncomfortable, violated feeling ever. And it actually resulted in the fact that they deleted all of my tweets, all 59,000 tweets over the last 8 years. And I felt like my house got robbed. I felt like a part of my soul got ripped out. And it was emotional. It was stressful. I was scared. I was just like, it made me question everything about digital. And the lesson that I had from it is that, sure, I'm tweeting and I'm posting, but it's not my platform. Twitter could go down. Twitter went down earlier today. Like, all of your stuff could just be gone in a minute, in a poof of a second. You could be hacked. You know, these large companies, data breaches. And so I think understanding your own comfort level with your privacy, with your security, understanding those digital rights. I think that's a very important thing to understand. And because there are professionals that understand that more, I would point to researching, talking with an attorney, letting your employees know, not just from like your perspective, but from a professional perspective, what digital rights look like, from how, from the security of your computer working from home to a firewall, at a major corporation, to just all of that. So I would say seek guidance for that answer. And from a personal standpoint, it all seems like it's like, yeah, okay, until you get hacked and then your life changes. So understanding that side of the coin, I think, is important. And again, I don't know if that answers it, but that was my answer.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, something I can add is, as an additional question was, what could be the potential risks? And that's related also to the bad experience that Ryan just mentioned. We have a interesting situation in Germany regarding LinkedIn. I think we're all connected on LinkedIn. And as you guys might know, Germany is very strict in terms of laws, personal rights related to the history we have in the Second World War, so protecting people. And what happened in the pandemic was, it was not my Twitter account which was hacked, but on LinkedIn, I experienced that some really crazy people, Nazi people, anti-Semitic people were coming in. And that is related to that. We all know LinkedIn made a shift more towards being some kind of Facebook, some kind of Instagram in that direction. But what I personally couldn't find out, why is it happening? And then I found out by digging deeper that that there are people who want to make stress, and they're searching for opportunities to make stress. And that's why it was happening in the end. So in all this transformation that we have, it's like we had before. A normal company runs like, we have to sell, but there's people out there who are looking for, we want to make stress in the end. And that's that's something we have to have on the radar, besides the opportunities, that there's some people who have exactly the opposite interest in the end.
And that's why I'll say blockchain technology, depending whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or Algorand, that is one of the biggest values for the future. Like, mark my words, the future will contain blockchain everywhere. Why? Because there's security elements, because you can't have bad actors that are corrupting things. You can't have, it's protecting against that. So the digital transformation itself is inherently trying to work to secure us all and all of our digital rights from even, protecting us against the downside of fiat currency, even to the most global things. So something like blockchain technology is trying to address that. And I think that not only is it the fastest adopted technology, but it's still at the same time something that people still have no idea about. And so we're in this really interesting early stage where, keep your ear to the train track, but watch out for that train coming.
I think that's a great wrap up. Guys, I mean, this was an amazing session. We had very, very nourishing. And Miguel is also writing, guys, what a webinar. Lovely. To everyone out there, first of all, please feel free to connect with us on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Thanks a lot for everyone who joined in here. For everyone who joined, also, please feel free to tweet about what you just experienced. We are people who are sharing experience, who we want to encourage you, and this is something you can give back to us and also to Keenfolks in terms of what did you learn out of here, and saying, hey, this is something cool I learned from Ken, from Ryan, and you can even read it out here from Joahnnes. So please download the study, and everyone, please stay healthy in these special times we're in. It was a true honor to have you guys, Ryan and Ken. I love that intercultural collaboration, and thanks, everyone.
Good to be here, everybody.
Thank you.
I think we're still live, so this is where we're supposed to dance to entertain people, right? Until that little thing goes off.